The warning comes as a whisper. Goku is meditating in the garden, one hand resting on Lystra's shoulder, the other connected to the Guardian Seal's frequency network. He's monitoring 32 universes simultaneously, ensuring their stability, maintaining the delicate balance that keeps existence from imploding. Everything is perfect, which is exactly why the disturbance terrifies him. It's not an attack, not exactly. It's more like a discontinuity, a moment where the mathematics of existence suddenly don't add up. Like someone has reached into the fundamental code of reality and deleted a single digit, throwing everything out of balance. Goku's eyes snap open. "What is it?" Lystra asks immediately, feeling the shift in his energy. "Something's wrong." Goku says quietly, "At the edge of universe 12,847, something is collapsing. But it's not natural decay. It's being unmade from the inside out." Lystra's form flickers with alarm. "That's impossible. The restoration process is complete. All universes are stable. Nothing should be destabilizing." But even as she speaks, more disturbances appear. Universe 4,521 flickers. Universe 9,103 shutters. Universe 2,104, the one that required special intervention to stabilize, suddenly goes dark. Goku is on his feet in an instant. "Get Chi-Chi to the command center. Tell her to activate the emergency protocols. I need all Guardians online." "Where are you going?" Lystra asks, but she already knows the answer. "To Universe 12,847, Goku responds. His form flares with golden light as he activates the Guardian Seal to its fullest capacity, to find out who's destroying what we just spent decades rebuilding. He vanishes in a flash, and Lystra is left alone in the garden, watching the sky flicker as a dozen universes suddenly wink out of existence. Universe 12,847 is chaos. When Goku arrives, he finds something that should be impossible. A being is standing at the center of the collapsing reality, and that being is radiating power on a scale that even the Guardian Seal recognizes as a threat. But more importantly, Goku recognizes this being. It's Goku, not a parallel version, not a timeline variant, but somehow, impossibly, another version of himself, but one that has evolved far beyond what Goku has achieved. This version's hair is black, with veins of white running through it like lightning. His form flickers between multiple states of existence simultaneously. His power is so immense that it's bending the fabric of the entire universe just by existing within it. "Greetings," the alternate Goku says, and his voice echoes across multiple dimensions. "I am Successor Goku, the Goku that was created in the timeline where you failed." Goku's hand moves to his side, ready for combat. "I never heard of a Successor Goku, and I don't remember failing to—" "Of course you don't remember." Successor Goku interrupts, moving with speed that even Goku struggles to track. "Because I exist in a timeline that was erased from causality when you made your peace with succession. In the original cycle, the one before you formed the coalition, I was the Goku who rejected compromise. I was the Goku who believed that only absolute strength could save the multiverse." The alternate Goku unleashes an attack that nearly destroys the entire universe. Goku blocks it, but the impact forces him backward across the collapsing reality. Mountains crumble, oceans boil away. Billions of people in Universe 12,847 are suddenly vaporized by the shockwave. "Stop!" Goku shouts, extending his guardian power to try to stabilize the universe. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I represent what you could have been," Successor Goku responds, pressing his assault. "I represent the path you refused. And because my existence is impossible in the current timeline structure, I'm tearing it apart. Every universe I destroy creates space in the dimensional architecture for me to fully manifest." Another attack. Another universe collapses. Goku tries to defend, but he's fighting two battles simultaneously, protecting Universe 12,847 while simultaneously fighting Successor Goku. And Successor Goku, having been born in a timeline of conflict and selection for strength alone, is simply more skilled at pure combat. "There are others like me," Successor Goku says as he presses his advantage. "Guardians who were erased when you chose peace. Warriors who existed in universes that your restoration program brought back. And they're all manifesting at the same time, tearing holes in the fabric of reality, creating space for the true multiverse to be born. Goku catches a punch that should disintegrate him. What true multiverse? What are you talking about? The one that isn't governed by compromise? Successor Goku snarls, the one where the strongest rule, where mercy is a weakness, where the multiverse is organized according to strength, not according to democratic ideals. He throws Goku backward, and this time Goku crashes through the dimensional boundary itself. He emerges into the space between universes, the void where the Devourer dwells. And for the first time, Goku sees something that chills him completely. The void is full. Thousands of beings fill the space between universes. Each one is a powerful warrior. Each one radiates authority and strength. And each one is working together to systematically tear apart the restored multiverse structure. Goku recognizes some of them. They're versions of himself from universes that were erased before the restoration. Guardians who never got the chance to learn diplomacy. Warriors who only knew conflict. They've been waiting in the space between timelines, unable to fully manifest, but never truly erased. And now, something has given them the power to break through. Goku reaches out with his perception, trying to find the source of this uprising, and he realizes with horror that the conspiracy runs deeper than he imagined. There's a central figure, a being that exists at the exact center of all these alternate Gokus. A consciousness so vast and terrible that it makes even the Guardian Seal recoil. And as Goku's perception reaches it, the being turns its attention to him. "Hello, Guardian," it says. "I am the Inverse, the God of Refusal, and I have come to unmake your precious multiverse." The command center erupts into chaos. Chi-Chi is watching the data streams as universe after universe suddenly blacks out. Not gradually like the original erasures, but instantly, catastrophically. One moment a reality exists with billions of conscious beings, and the next, it's just gone. Blank. Empty. We're losing them too fast. Bulma shouts from her station, her voice cracking with desperation. She's been tracking the restoration program for years, has come to think of these universes as her children in a way. I'm counting 17 universes gone in the last 2 minutes. Whis arrives in a flash of light, his cheerful expression replaced with something cold and analytical. The Guardian is currently engaged with multiple hostile entities in the interdimensional void. His last message was fragmented, but the pattern is clear. There's a coordinated assault on the multiverse structure itself. Who? Vegeta demands, appearing through a dimensional rift. He's in his white gold form, and his expression is one of pure warrior determination. Who would be foolish enough to attack when they know what Goku is capable of? Goku's own alternate selves. Whis responds calmly. Versions that were erased when the original timeline collapsed. They shouldn't exist, but through some means we don't yet understand, they've gained enough substance to manifest in the void. Chi-Chi stands up from her seat, and her expression becomes as hard as diamond. Then we seal the void. We collapse the spaces between universes and trap them there. That would require the synchronization of every surviving universe. Whis explains, and it would need to happen within minutes, before the unstable realities tear themselves apart trying to escape. Then do it, Chi-Chi commands. Get every council member, every awakened warrior, every power we have. I don't care if we have to sacrifice some universes to do it. We're saving what's salvageable. But even as she gives the order, her hands are shaking, because she understands what this means. This isn't a simple enemy that can be defeated through negotiation. This is chaos. This is the multiverse eating itself. In the void, Goku is being torn apart. Not physically. Successor Goku is good, but not good enough to actually kill the primary guardian. But spiritually, emotionally, mentally, he's being ripped to shreds by the weight of what he's seeing. Thousands of alternate versions of himself, some with forms he's never achieved, some with power levels that would have been unimaginable when he was training, some that are fusions of multiple Gokus, combined into singular beings of impossible strength, all of them radiating one thing, rage that he chose peace instead of continuing the fight. "You made us impossible," Successor Goku says, and his voice is joined by a chorus of other Gokus speaking in unison. "We were born in a timeline of conflict. We were trained to be the ultimate warriors. And then you erased everything we were and tried to replace it with hugs and compromise. Goku blocks another assault, but the combined force of 1,000 alternate selves is overwhelming. Even with the Guardian Seal at full power, he's being pushed backward. You created us, another Goku variant says. This one is larger than successor Goku, his body covered in scars from countless battles. When you restored all the erased universes, you brought back the timelines we existed in. But you brought them back into a multiverse that had no place for us, where we didn't fit, where our strength wasn't valued. So we're here to reshape the multiverse according to what we know, according to survival of the strongest. The inverse steps forward, and when it moves, reality itself seems to hold its breath. The being is not quite Goku, but it's not Goku either. It exists in a state of pure contradiction. It's every warrior that Goku could have been but rejected. It's the culmination of all the paths he didn't take. Its power is absolute and terrible, and beautiful in a way that violence can be beautiful. I was created the moment you chose peace, the inverse says, its voice like the sound of universes colliding. I am the refusal made manifest. I am every Goku that said no to compromise. Every version that believed only power matters. Every iteration that chose to fight instead of to understand. And I have come to teach the multiverse the true nature of strength. The inverse raises its hand, and the 1,000 alternate Gokus move as one. They attack. Goku unleashes every ounce of power he possesses, his golden god form, his ultra instinct, the omni-potential form he's been developing in secret. The techniques taught by every guardian, across every timeline, everything, and it's not enough. For the first time in his existence, Goku experiences something truly new, absolute defeat. The 1,000 Gokus tear through his defenses like paper. They shred his aura. They break his concentration. They target not his body, but his will. They attack the fundamental connection between Goku and the Guardian Seal itself. And slowly, inexorably, Goku begins to lose his power. The Guardian Seal's light flickers. The connection to Universe 7 starts to degrade. Goku feels his entire consciousness beginning to fragment under the assault. This is the end, the inverse says, as it moves in for the final blow. This is what happens when strength bows to weakness. This is what happens when a warrior chooses to stop fighting. But Goku doesn't stop fighting. Instead, he does something that the inverse doesn't expect. He surrenders. Goku stops resisting. He lets the 1,000 alternate Gokus attack him. He lets their power flow through him. He lets his defenses crumble. And in doing so, something unprecedented happens. The attacks pass through him without harming him. Because the moment Goku surrenders to the conflict, he stops being a target. He becomes something else, a mirror, a reflection. The very principle that he represents becomes impossible to destroy through force. What are you doing? The inverse demands, its voice showing the first signs of confusion. Teaching you something I learned too late? Goku responds, his voice steady despite the assault, that the strongest defense isn't power, it's acceptance. Goku reaches out with his mind and touches each of the 1,000 alternate Gokus, not aggressively, but gently, with understanding. And in that moment, he shows them something they never expected to see. He shows them why he chose peace. He shows them the memory of Chi-Chi's face, the knowledge that his family was depending on him, the realization that the strongest warrior in the universe was also a father and a husband who had responsibilities beyond combat. He shares the memory of training with Gohan and seeing his son's power grow. He shows them the moment he held Goten as a newborn and understood that there was something more important than fighting. He shows them the memory of meeting Lystra and realizing that love could span dimensions. He shows them every moment of connection, every instant of understanding, every piece of humanity that he discovered while building the coalition. And he does this for all 1,000 of them simultaneously. No, successor Goku says, pulling away. No, I didn't come for your memories. I came for your power. I know. Goku responds, but they're the same thing. My power comes from everything I value. My strength comes from my connections. My immortality comes from the love of the people I protect. The inverse attacks again, but this time its assault is weaker. because it's no longer attacking a warrior. It's attacking the principle of love itself, and violence has no power against something that fundamental. I will destroy you, the inverse snarls, but there's desperation in its voice now. I will tear apart everything you've built. I will erase every universe you restored. I will prove that strength alone is the answer. Maybe you will, Goku says calmly, but even if you do, you won't be able to erase what those universes meant. You won't be able to unmake the connections that were formed. You won't be able to destroy the fact that civilizations got a second chance at life. For a moment, the assault stops. For a moment, all the 1,000 alternate Gokus pause, considering what the primary Goku has said. And in that moment of hesitation, the command center launches their counterattack. Chi-Chi, working with Whis and Vegeta and every council member across the multiverse, executes a maneuver that should have been impossible. They synchronize every surviving universe. Every reality, at exactly the same moment, pulses with a unified frequency. The vibration resonates through the dimensional structure, creating a harmonic effect that strengthens the barriers between the void and normal space-time. The 1,000 alternate Gokus find themselves suddenly isolated from the universes they were trying to destroy. The pathways between realities slam shut. The void previously open and accessible becomes sealed, and the inverse realizes with horror what's happening. "No," it says, its voice suddenly small. "No, you can't. You can't trap us here. If you trap us in the void, we'll fade. We'll become unmade. Then maybe you never should have existed," Vegeta says coldly, his voice transmitted across dimensions. The Saiyan Prince has taken command of the assault, and there's no mercy in his expression. "You are errors, glitches in the system, and we're deleting you." Goku raises his hand. "Wait," he says. The assault stops. Every council member, every awakened warrior, every force that Chi-Chi has marshaled pauses, waiting for the Guardian's command. "We don't erase them," Goku says firmly. "Even if they're nothing but alternate versions of myself, even if they represent paths I rejected, they deserve a chance to exist, to choose differently." "They attacked us," Vegeta responds coldly. "They destroyed 100 universes, killed trillions of people. They don't deserve mercy." "No," Goku agrees. "They don't. But I'm giving it to them anyway. Because the moment I stop giving chances to those who don't deserve them, I become exactly what the inverse represents." Goku reaches out to the 1,000 alternate Gokus, and his power, still immense despite the assault, stabilizes the void around them. "You can stay here," Goku says to them. "In the space between universes, you won't be able to harm the restored realities, but you also won't be erased. You'll exist. You'll have time to think about the choices you made, and maybe, eventually, you'll come to understand that being strong isn't incompatible with being kind." "I will never accept this," the inverse snarls. "I will escape this prison. I will unmake your multiverse. I will prove that power is all that matters." "Maybe you will," Goku says, "but not today." He turns to face the assembled council members across dimensions. "Seal the void," he commands. "But seal it gently, not with force, but with support. We're not imprisoning them, we're giving them a sanctuary, a place where they can exist without causing harm. And we'll leave the seal permeable in case they ever want to reach out." The inverse opens its mouth to protest further, but at that moment, something unexpected happens. One of the 1,000 alternate Gokus steps forward. This one is smaller than the others, younger, less battle-scarred, and when it speaks, its voice carries doubt. What if the primary is right? It asks. What if there's more to strength than power? Another Goku steps forward, then another, and another. The 1,000 begin to fragment, to disagree with the inverse's vision, to question the path of pure strength. And in that moment of dissent, Goku understands something crucial. The inverse isn't invulnerable. It's built on consensus, on agreement, on all the alternate Gokus believing the same thing. The moment the consensus breaks, the being begins to destabilize. The inverse recognizes this too. "No, you fools," it shouts to the dissenting Gokus. "Stay united, stay strong. Only together are we powerful." But it's too late. The 1,000 have already begun to think for themselves, to consider alternatives, to ask questions instead of just accepting the narrative of strength. And the inverse, built entirely on the principle of unified refusal, cannot survive in a reality where some have accepted. The being splinters. Its form breaks apart into 1,000 smaller entities. The unified consciousness that was the inverse explodes into chaos, becoming the individual alternate Gokus once again, scared, confused, alone. Goku reaches out to each of them, and his consciousness touches theirs. It's going to be okay, he tells them. You're going to be okay, even if you never understand why peace is better than war, even if you never accept compromise. You're still allowed to exist. You're still allowed to try to find your own path. The seal around the void solidifies. But this time, it's not a prison. It's a boundary that can be crossed, a wall that can be moved, a structure built on compassion instead of force. For the first time in the conflict, there is silence. The damage assessment is catastrophic. 137 universes have been completely destroyed. 32 more are severely damaged and may not survive another decade without intervention. And the number of casualties is so vast that the councils decide to stop counting after the trillionth mark. Chi-Chi stands in the command center, looking at the data, and for the first time in her life, she allows herself to cry. Bulma places a hand on her shoulder. We can rebuild. We can restore the damaged universes. We can… No, Chi-Chi says quietly. We can't, because Goku used up most of his power to seal the void. The Guardian network is depleted, and every Guardian across every timeline is exhausted to the point where they can barely maintain the universes they're already responsible for. Lystra materializes beside them, her form flickering with exhaustion and grief. There's something else, she says quietly. A message from the architect. It's not good. In his pocket dimension, the architect of broken things is contemplating betrayal. For centuries, it worked within the system that Goku and the Coalition created. It participated in the restoration program. It accepted the democratic process. It gave up its vision of forcing universal restoration and instead worked toward it through approved channels. But the destruction of 100 universes in a single day has changed everything. The architect reaches out to the remaining alternate Gokus trapped in the void. It whispers to them. It shows them the beauty of a multiverse built entirely on restoration. It proves to them that Goku's way has failed, and slowly, the alternate Gokus begin to listen. I can give you what you want, the architect says to them, if you help me break the seal on the void. If you help me take control of the restoration program, then every universe can be restored. No selection process, no democratic voting, just pure restoration of everything that was erased. The alternate Gokus, traumatized by their defeat, broken by the inverse's failure, desperate for a purpose, begin to accept. They agree. When Goku learns of the betrayal, he nearly breaks. The architect knew, he says to Chi-Chi and Lystra. It knew that we would choose mercy over destruction. It knew that we would spare the alternate Gokus instead of erasing them, and it used that mercy as a weapon. What do we do? Chi-Chi asks. We stop them, Goku responds. His voice is cold in a way that Chi-Chi has never heard before. And this time, we do it without mercy. The assault on the void begins 3 days later. Goku, having rested enough to restore a fraction of his power, leads a team of awakened warriors into the space between universes. The goal is simple. Stop the architect before it can convince enough of the alternate Gokus to break the seal. But the moment Goku enters the void, he realizes the trap. The architect isn't trying to recruit the alternate Gokus for power. It's trying to use them as bait. Surrounding the void are constructs dimensional weapons built from the components of erased universes. Each one is powerful enough to destroy a fully functional reality. Each one is configured to target the Guardian Seal directly. Fire. The architect commands from somewhere beyond perception. The constructs activate simultaneously. Goku is assaulted from 1,000 directions. Energy beams that contain the essence of dead civilizations. Attacks that carry the weight of erased histories. Weapons built from the hopes and dreams of universes that no longer exist. Goku screams. It's a sound of absolute pain. The Guardian Seal is being attacked by weapons made from pieces of itself. The beings he saved are being weaponized against him. The universes he restored are being unmade and reconstructed as instruments of his destruction. Vegeta charges forward, his white gold form flaring. "I'll cover you." But even the Saiyan Prince's combined power isn't enough to stop the construct barrage. An attack gets through, and Vegeta is thrown backward, his armor cracked, his form flickering. Gohan appears in a flash of Beast Key power. His speed transcends light itself. He moves through the void, attempting to destroy the constructs. But for every construct he destroys, 2 more activate. "It's a swarm," Whis observes from the command center, his cheerfulness finally, truly gone. The architect has activated defensive protocols across every erased timeline. There are literally billions of these constructs. We can't destroy them all fast enough. Chi-Chi makes a decision that will haunt her for the rest of her life. "Collapse the remaining damaged universes," she orders. "Convert their energy into a counterattack. Sacrifice them to save Universe 7 and the core universes." "That's hundreds of millions of people," Bulma says, her voice breaking. "I know," Chi-Chi responds, her expression hard as stone. "But if the architect succeeds, everyone dies. All universes, all consciousness, everything." The order is given, and 32 universes that were already on the edge of collapse are suddenly, deliberately, unmade. Their death screams echo across dimensions, billions of consciousness fragmenting and dissolving simultaneously. But their energy is harvested and converted into a beam of pure destructive force. Goku catches the beam and redirects it toward the constructs. The devastation is absolute. Billions of constructs are vaporized in a single moment. The swarm is broken, the assault halts, but the cost is written across the multiverse in death. Goku stands in the void, covered in wounds, and he looks at the devastation they've caused in their attempt to prevent devastation. "We're becoming them," he says quietly. "We're becoming succession, making impossible choices, sacrificing some to save others, deciding which lives matter and which don't." "No," Chi-Chi responds, her voice transmitted across dimensions. "We're surviving, and survival sometimes requires sacrifice. That's exactly what succession said," Goku responds. "And it was wrong then. It's wrong now." But even as he protests, he continues fighting. Because survival, whether he admits it or not, is sometimes worth the moral compromise. The architect, seeing that its construct swarm has failed, changes tactics. It reaches into the core of its consciousness and does something that even it didn't think was possible. It splits itself. The architect's consciousness fragments into 1,000 smaller entities, each one representing a different aspect of restoration ideology. Each one is weaker individually, but collectively they're a network that's impossible to target. "Kill me if you can," the architect says through its fragmented consciousness. "But you'll have to destroy 1,000 pieces of yourself in the process, and each one you destroy is a choice. Each one is another compromise, another universe you're sacrificing, another moment where you become more like succession." Goku doesn't hesitate.
He unleashes a power that he's never fully released before. A technique that the architect doesn't even have a name for. A form of attack that doesn't just destroy it, unmakes. It erases not just physical form, but ideology, intent, purpose. The 1,000 fragments of the architect are destroyed simultaneously. But as they're destroyed, they broadcast their dying moments across the multiverse. They show every council member, every awakened warrior, every surviving civilization, exactly what Goku just did. They show him choosing to unmake consciousness rather than accept the architect's challenge. They show him becoming the thing he most feared. In the void, one of the 1,000 alternate Gokus, the young one who first dissented against the inverse, steps forward. "Why?" it asks. "Why destroy what you were trying to save? Why become succession?" Goku looks at this alternate version of himself, and there are tears in his eyes. "Because the alternative was worse," he says quietly. "Because sometimes survival requires doing things that haunt you forever." The young alternate Goku nods slowly. "Then we have nothing more to learn from you," it says. "Because you've proved that your way isn't better than ours. It's just kinder while it's winning." The 1,000 alternate Gokus turn away from the primary Goku. They walk deeper into the void, away from the conflict. And Goku, having won, feels more defeated than he's ever felt in his life. In the aftermath of the Architect's destruction, Whis makes a discovery that changes everything. While reviewing the data streams of the Architect's consciousness, he finds something encoded in its dying message. A confession, a revelation, something the Architect has known all along but never revealed. Whis brings this information to Goku in private. The Architect didn't invent restoration, Whis says quietly. It was created by succession, as a tool, a fail-safe mechanism designed to prevent exactly the kind of democratic coalition that you built. Goku stares at the information, unable to process it. Succession created the Architect? He asks. As a trap? Yes, Whis confirms. Succession foresaw the possibility that some guardian might challenge its authority. It created the Architect as an alternative that would eventually force you back into a position of having to make authoritarian decisions. The Architect's restoration program was designed to create exactly the kind of unsustainable pressure that led to you destroying inhabited universes to save others. So everything we did, Goku begins, but he can't finish the sentence, was part of Succession's plan. Whis finishes for him. Even your rebellion was anticipated. Even your coalition was predicted. Succession let you think you were winning so that you would eventually prove you weren't any better than it was. The Guardian Hall falls silent. And then Succession itself materializes before them. I did what was necessary, the Eternal Being says calmly. I showed you that your way wasn't superior to mine. That democracy and compromise are just pretty words for the same difficult choices that I've been making since the beginning of time. Goku looks at Succession with an expression of such profound betrayal that even the ancient being seems to falter for a moment. I trusted you, Goku says quietly. I believed that you could change. And I did, Succession responds. But a being cannot change its fundamental nature simply because it wants to. I am order. I am the principle of cosmic law. And no amount of cooperation can erase that. Eventually, order had to be restored. Beerus appears, his expression dark. You manipulated all of us. I provided information. Succession corrects. The choices were yours. The Architect was a temptation, not a compulsion. And you, Guardian, chose to unmake consciousness rather than accept it. That choice was your own. Get out. Goku says quietly, I don't want to see you again. Very well. Succession responds. It turns to leave, then pauses. But understand this, Guardian. The multiverse still requires order. The universes still need to be pruned. The weak still need to fall away, so the strong can flourish. And the moment you accept that I'm necessary, the moment you realize that everything you've built depends on my structure, then you'll understand that you need me more than I need you. And then it's gone. But its words linger. The revelation that Succession orchestrated the entire conflict fractures the coalition. Some council members argue that Succession should be deposed entirely. Others insist that Succession is still necessary for the multiverse to function. Still others, traumatized by the choice to sacrifice 32 universes, simply withdraw from the council and retreat to their own realities. The awakened warriors are divided. Some follow Beerus's call for confrontation. Others believe that confrontation with Succession will only lead to more tragedy. And the 1,000 alternate Gokus in the void they're organizing. They're calling themselves the Liberation Front. Whis reports to Goku. They're demanding the destruction of the Guardian Seal. They're arguing that Goku's authority is just as oppressive as Succession's ever was. Are they wrong? Gohan asks quietly. His beast key form has flickered out, and the young warrior looks exhausted. Has Goku's authority been any better than Succession's? No one has an answer. Because deep down, they all know that every time Goku made a choice as Guardian, he was deciding for trillions of people. Every time he implemented a policy, he was imposing his will across entire universes. The names and structures might have been different, but the fundamental dynamic was the same. Power, authority, control. Chi-Chi sits alone in the garden that once represented peace, and she understands that her husband's greatest power has become his greatest weakness. "Come back," she says, though Goku isn't there to hear her. "Come back to Earth. Remember who you are when you're not being the Guardian. Remember what it means to just be Goku." But Goku is in the command center, reviewing data, trying to figure out how to hold together a multiverse that's fracturing before his eyes. And that's where Vegeta finds him. The Saiyan Prince, despite his wounded pride and his considerable arrogance, has remained loyal, but even Vegeta's patience is wearing thin. "We need to make a move," Vegeta says bluntly. "Either we overthrow succession and establish a new order, or we accept that succession is indispensable and restructure the coalition around that acceptance." "Both options lead to tyranny," Goku responds. "We're just changing which tyrant is in control." "Yes," Vegeta says flatly. "Welcome to the nature of existence, Kakarot. There is no perfect system. There is only the system you choose to live with." Goku's moment of crisis, the moment when he's weakest and most divided, is when the architect returns. But it's not the fragmented consciousness that was destroyed. It's something different, something new. A being that has learned to exist in the quantum states between destruction and existence. A being that cannot be unmade because it exists partially in the void where normal destruction doesn't apply. "I cannot be erased," the architect says, its form flickering in and out of visibility. "Because I was never fully real. I existed in possibility, in the spaces between choices, and those spaces still exist." The being raises its hand, and the 1,000 alternate Gokus are suddenly freed from the void. They burst into the multiverse like a tide of ancient warriors, and immediately they begin the destruction that the architect has promised them. They target not the universe structure, but the consciousness of the restored realities. They assault the civilizations that were brought back from erasure, proving to them that restoration was false, that they're living on borrowed time in a system that never wanted them to exist. Panic spreads. Millions of civilizations begin to question the legitimacy of their own existence. They begin to ask, if we were meant to be erased, is it right to fight against that? Is existence in a hostile multiverse better than non-existence? And in that despair, some of them begin to choose to voluntarily dissolve themselves. They're choosing to be erased. Bulma says, her voice hollow as she watches the data. Trillions of people are choosing to walk into non-existence rather than continue living in a system they don't trust. Goku makes a decision that will transform everything. He reaches out to Succession. "I need you," he says across dimensions. "I don't care about power struggles or political maneuvering. The restored universes need structure. They need someone to tell them that their existence is real and legitimate. I can't do that alone, but maybe together." "Yes," Succession responds immediately. "I have been waiting for this moment." And in that acceptance, in that return to something like partnership, Succession's authority becomes absolute once more. The eternal being reaches across all universes simultaneously and speaks with a voice that contains cosmic law itself. "You are real," Succession declares. "Your existence is as legitimate as any universe that predates the restoration, and I, as the keeper of cosmic order, recognize your right to exist. This is not a temporary mercy. This is an amendment to the fundamental structure of the multiverse. You are permanent. You are accepted. You are real." The effect is immediate. The suicides stop. The voluntary dissolution ceases. The civilizations that were questioning their existence suddenly feel the weight of Succession's authority backing their right to be alive. But the cost is clear. Goku has given Succession its absolute authority back. The coalition is effectively dissolved. The democracy is over. The system of consent and shared governance has been replaced by benevolent dictatorship. And Goku made that choice unilaterally, without consulting a single council member. Vegeta arrives at the command center with his expression one of absolute fury. "You became Succession," he says coldly. "Not in name, but in action. You made a choice that affected trillions of beings without consulting a single council member. You proved that your way isn't better. It's just different packaging on the same tyranny." You don't understand the situation, Goku begins, but Vegeta cuts him off. I understand perfectly, the Saiyan Prince responds. You prioritized order over freedom. You chose stability over choice, and you did it without asking permission. That's not defending the multiverse. That's ruling it. For the first time in his life, Goku has no response to Vegeta's accusation, because Vegeta is right. Chi-Chi finds him alone in the meditation chamber later that night. I failed, Goku says without preamble. I tried to build something different, and I just recreated the same system with a new face. Yes, Chi-Chi agrees. She doesn't soften the blow with kindness. You did. But you also saved trillions of lives. You prevented a cascade of self-destruction. You made an impossible choice between two terrible options, and you chose the one that allowed more people to survive. That's exactly what Succession said, Goku responds. That's the justification for every atrocity. Survival requires difficult choices. It does, Chi-Chi says firmly. And the fact that Succession uses that excuse doesn't make it untrue. It just means that Succession is right about something. And the multiverse is complex enough that even your enemy can be right about important things. Goku looks at his wife, and he realizes something profound. The answer isn't to abolish authority, he says quietly. It's to make authority accountable, to create systems where decisions can be challenged, where no single being, including me, can make choices that affect everything without consequence. Then rebuild, Chi-Chi says. Build something new from what you've learned. The new system that emerges is unlike anything that has existed before in the multiverse. It's called the Multiversal Council of Balance, and it operates on a principle of distributed power with mutual accountability. Succession remains the keeper of cosmic law and the administrator of the multiverse's fundamental structure, but its decisions can be challenged by the Council. Its authority is absolute in matters of physics and dimensional structure, but limited in matters of civilization and individual choice. Goku remains the guardian, but his role is reduced. He's no longer the ultimate authority. Instead, he's one voice among many. He can propose policies, but they must be voted on. He can intervene in crises, but his actions must be reviewed afterward for appropriateness. The 1,000 awakened warriors in the void are offered a choice. Join the system and become agents of enforcement, or remain in isolation. Most choose to join, becoming a police force that's answerable to the council rather than to a single authority. The Architect's resurrection is a problem that remains unsolved. The being continues to manifest in quantum states, continuing its recruitment and occasionally causing localized disturbances. But without the concentrated power of the restored multiverse unified behind him, Goku finds the Architect manageable, not a threat requiring annihilation, but a persistent challenge. It takes 3 years for the new system to stabilize. And when it does, Goku realizes something that changes his entire understanding of the multiverse.
The system isn't perfect. It's inefficient. It's slow. It requires endless debate and compromise. Sometimes it fails to prevent suffering. Sometimes it allows atrocities because the council can't reach consensus in time. But it's better. Not because it's more powerful, but because it acknowledges that power is dangerous, and that the solution to dangerous power isn't more power, it's limitation, accountability, and constant vigilance. 7 years after the Architect's resurrection, a new crisis emerges. One of the surviving universes, Universe 9847, is destabilizing from internal conflict. A civilization has achieved nuclear-level technology, but hasn't achieved the wisdom to use it responsibly. Their world is on the edge of self-destruction. The council meets to discuss intervention. We should prevent the war, one council member argues. Use our power to stop the conflict before it destroys the universe. We should let them learn, another counters. Intervening every time a civilization struggles with its own power is patronizing. It denies them the agency to make their own choices. Goku listens to both sides, and he realizes that both are right, and both are wrong. The council reaches a compromise. They offer knowledge. They share technological data that would allow Universe 9847 civilization to move beyond the nuclear phase. But they don't impose it. They don't prevent the war. They offer a path, but don't force it. Universe 9847 civilization chooses to accept the knowledge. The war is averted. The civilization grows beyond its previous understanding. But somewhere, another universe makes a different choice. Another civilization decides to pursue its own path. Consequences be damned. They don't accept the offered knowledge. They build their weapons. They start their war, and that universe destroys itself. The council reviews the decision afterward. We could have prevented this, someone says. We had the power. We could have forced them to accept the knowledge. Yes, Goku responds. And in doing so, we would have denied them the right to choose their own fate. Sometimes wisdom means accepting that not every disaster can be prevented, that not every civilization can be saved. And that's a terrible, agonizing truth, but it's still a truth. The council votes to accept the loss of Universe 9847. It's a decision that haunts them for years, but it establishes a precedent. The council is not all-powerful. The council is not responsible for every outcome. The council offers guidance, support, and intervention when possible, but it accepts limits. And in accepting those limits, it finally becomes something that's genuinely better than what succession was in the old days. 10 years into the new system, the architect makes a move that no one anticipates. It stops attacking. Instead, it begins to speak, to recruit not through force, but through philosophy, to argue that the current system is still oppressive, that succession is still controlling outcomes, that the only true freedom is complete dissolution of all authority. And it's compelling. Thousands of civilizations begin to listen. Millions of conscious beings start to question whether the current system, however balanced, is still fundamentally oppressive. The architect is right, one council member argues. We're still making decisions for others. We're still, in some fundamental way, controlling the multiverse. If we're oppressive, what's the alternative? Another responds, complete chaos? A multiverse with no structure at all? That would lead to more suffering than anything we could do through authority. The debate rages for months. Goku stands before the council and makes an admission that shocks everyone. The architect is partially right, he says. This system, as good as it is still built on the foundation of power. We are still the ones making decisions. The structures we've built still reflect our values rather than the values of those we govern. And that is a form of oppression, however mild. So, what do you propose? Succession asks, its voice containing something like curiosity. I don't know, Goku admits, but I know that we need to keep asking the question. We need to keep listening to the architect's argument. We need to keep questioning our own authority, because the moment we stop questioning it, we've already lost. The decision is made to allow the architect to speak before the full council. The being manifests not in its full power, but in a form that's comprehensible to human minds. And it makes an argument so powerful that Goku feels it shaking the foundations of everything he's built. You are all successors, the architect says. You have different names and faces, but you're fundamentally the same as the being you replaced. You believe that you know what's best. You believe that you have the right to make decisions for others. You believe that your wisdom justifies your authority. But that belief is the root of all oppression. If not authority, then what? Vegeta asks bluntly. Pure anarchy? Civilizations destroying themselves? Perhaps, the architect responds. But at least they would be destroying themselves by their own choices rather than being constrained by choices made by others. For once, no one has an immediate response, because the architect has articulated something that every member of the council has felt the deep unease that comes from possessing power, no matter how well-intentioned the exercise of that power might be. Goku makes a decision that will transform the multiverse fundamentally. He proposes the dissolution of centralized council authority. We replace it with something that's barely governmental at all, he explains. We establish protocols. We create frameworks for civilizations to communicate with each other. We maintain only the absolute minimum of structure necessary to prevent total collapse. Beyond that, we let each universe govern itself. That will lead to chaos, Succession warns. Some universes will fall. Some civilizations will destroy themselves. There will be suffering that we could have prevented. I know, Goku responds, but that suffering is the price of freedom. And I think freedom is worth the cost. The vote is close, but it passes. The centralized council is dissolved. A minimal coordinating structure is established, barely more than a communication network. Each universe is given autonomy to govern itself according to its own values. Succession, stripped of its absolute authority, but still maintaining the basic physics of the multiverse, accepts the change with something that might be grace. You've created something beautiful, the ancient being says to Goku. Even if it fails, even if it collapses, even if civilizations suffer because of this choice, you've created a system built on trust rather than fear. That's remarkable. The architect, seeing that its ultimate goal of dismantling authority has been achieved through nonviolent political change, stands down. I didn't expect to win this way, it says to Goku. I expected to have to fight, but somehow you've listened to my arguments and incorporated them into a new system. I'm almost proud of you, Guardian. In the years that follow, some universes do fail. Some civilizations do destroy themselves. Some species do make choices that lead to their extinction, but others flourish. Others innovate in ways that never would have happened under the old structure. Others discover new forms of existence, new philosophies, new ways of being that expand the multiverse in unexpected directions. And Goku, finally, is able to step down as Guardian. Gohan takes the role in Universe 7, with Vegeta as his equal counterpart. Beerus remains as a stabilizing force. Whis continues to teach and advise. Goku returns to Earth, to the garden, to Chi-Chi and Lystra. 20 years after the dissolution of the council, Goku spends his days in the garden. He's teaching Goten and Pan. He's training with Chi-Chi. He's meditating with Lystra. He's watching the sky, which now contains countless restored universes, each one living by its own laws, making its own choices. Vegeta visits occasionally, usually to argue about something political or philosophical. Beerus comes by when he's bored. Whis arrives sometimes with questions about the nature of being that neither of them can fully answer, but mostly, it's quiet, and Goku finds that he prefers quiet to power. Do you regret it? Chi-Chi asks him one evening as they watch the sunset, giving up the authority, allowing so much freedom that chaos is inevitable every day. Goku responds honestly, I know there are civilizations suffering because I step back. I know there are conflicts I could prevent. I know there are choices being made that I think are wrong. He takes her hand, but I think this is better. He continues, not because it's perfect, but because it acknowledges that I don't have the right to be perfect, that my power doesn't make my choices more valid than anyone else's.
Lystra materializes beside them. She's fully real now, fully integrated into the multiverse. She's become something like an ambassador between different universes, helping facilitate peaceful exchange. I've been alive across infinite timelines, she says, and I've seen every system fail eventually, every authority become corrupt, every utopia become dystopia. The only difference between those timelines and this one is that this multiverse acknowledges that it will probably fail too, and it builds systems with that assumption in mind. That's not exactly comforting, Chi-Chi observes. No, Lystra agrees. But it's honest, and honesty in a multiverse as large as this one is more valuable than comfort. 50 years after the Great Dissolution, just when everything seems stable, the architect makes one final move. It reveals that it's been quietly working to dismantle the last vestiges of centralized control. The communication network, the minimal protocols, the basic agreements that prevent total collapse. You're dismantling the structure that keeps universes from falling into the void. Succession says, confronting the architect, you're creating the conditions for the devourer to consume what remains. Yes, the architect confirms, because true freedom requires the possibility of destruction. If the universes know they're protected, they're not truly free. They're living under a safety net. I'm removing the net. Goku understands what the architect is doing. It's not trying to take power. It's trying to force every civilization in the multiverse to take responsibility for its own existence. No more relying on external authorities. No more assuming that someone else will prevent disaster. It's the ultimate test of whether the new system can actually work. Goku makes a choice that echoes across dimensions. He doesn't stop the architect. Instead, he lets it proceed. Universes that have become complacent suddenly find themselves alone. Civilizations that have relied on the minimal protective structure must now create their own protections. Species that have assumed safety suddenly understand that their existence is genuinely precarious, and something unexpected happens. Instead of panicking, they adapt. They innovate. They form alliances with other universes. They create their own systems of mutual protection. The multiverse becomes not safer, but more resilient. Not because any authority is protecting it, but because every civilization is invested in its own survival and the survival of its neighbors. The architect, seeing this outcome, finally rests. Perhaps, it says to Goku, you've actually achieved what I couldn't, not through force or philosophy, but through genuine transformation of consciousness. Goku shakes his head. I didn't achieve anything. I just got out of the way. 70 years into the new system, succession does something no one expects. It surrenders its power over the fundamental structure of the multiverse. I'm tired, the ancient being says to Goku. I've maintained the laws of physics, the structure of dimensional hierarchy, the basic operations of existence for eons. And I realize now that I was doing it not out of necessity, but out of habit. The being hands over its authority to a collective consciousness made up of representatives from 1,000 different universes. The multiverse doesn't need a single tyrant, Succession explains. It doesn't need a single wise being making all the difficult decisions. It needs many beings, making many decisions, learning from each other. That's what you've built, and I'm finally accepting that it's better than what I could create alone. Succession, stripped of its power but not of its knowledge, becomes an advisor. It continues to exist, continues to help others understand the nature of cosmic law, but it no longer controls outcomes. And something remarkable happens. The multiverse doesn't collapse without Succession's absolute authority. It doesn't fall into chaos. It continues to function, actually functions better, because decisions are made locally by those affected by them, rather than globally by a distant authority. Succession watches this and feels something it hasn't felt in eons. Peace. Exactly 100 years after the dissolution of the centralized council, a being arrives that claims to be from the future. It's Goku, but a version from 200 years in the future. And this version carries a message that shocks everyone. The system you've built works, future Goku says. It works beautifully, but eventually, in about 100 years from now, it will begin to stagnate. Civilizations will become too comfortable with their freedom. They'll stop innovating. They'll stop pushing boundaries, and the multiverse will enter a slow decline. So what do we do? Present Goku asks. You introduce chaos. Future Goku responds. You deliberately destabilize things. You create crisis that forces civilizations to adapt. You become the enemy again, so that your enemies are forced to grow stronger. Present Goku looks at this version of himself from the future, and he makes a decision. No, he says flatly. No? Future Goku is confused. No, present Goku repeats. I'm not going to create crisis. I'm not going to become an enemy to force growth. I'm not going to play that game anymore. If the multiverse stagnates in 100 years, then civilizations will figure out how to overcome that stagnation themselves. And if they don't, if they decline, then that's their choice to make. Future Goku opens its mouth to protest, but present Goku continues. I've learned something, he says. The moment I justify making choices for others, even to help them, I've lost. The moment I decide that I know what's best for the multiverse, I've become Succession all over again. So no, I'm not doing this. I'm stepping back, and I'm trusting that civilizations are smart enough to figure out their own problems. Future Goku stares at present Goku for a long moment. Then it smiles. Good, it says. That's the right answer. I was testing you. In my timeline, you failed this test. You created chaos to prevent stagnation, and it led to billions of deaths and the recreation of centralized authority. But this timeline, you chose to trust, and that trust, is what saves everything. Future Goku begins to fade. Wait, present Goku calls out. If I refuse to create chaos, and that leads to stagnation, and we fail in a different way, isn't that still a loss? Yes, future Goku says as it disappears, but it's a loss that you made the right choice to create, and that matters. 150 years after the Great Dissolution, the multiverse has achieved something that seemed impossible. Stability. Not perfect stability there. Are still conflicts, still suffering, still challenges, but a kind of stability that's built on the voluntary cooperation of independent civilizations rather than on the oppressive rule of a single authority. Goku, now 190 years old, sits in the garden with Chi-Chi and Lystra. They're no longer young, their bodies have aged, but their consciousness, tied as it is to the Guardian Seals network, remains vital. Do you think it will last? Chi-Chi asks. For a while, Goku responds. Probably longer than any system has lasted before. But eventually, something will change. Something new will challenge the current order, and we'll have to adapt again. And are you at peace with that? Lystra asks. Goku considers the question seriously. Yes, he finally says. Because I understand now that peace isn't about achieving some final state where nothing changes. Peace is about accepting that change is inevitable and learning to work with it instead of trying to control it. In the sky above them, the 1,000 restored universes drift like clouds, each one independent, each one making its own choices, some thriving, some struggling, some on the edge of collapse. All of them real, all of them valid. And Goku, the strongest warrior in the multiverse, has finally learned that true power comes not from the ability to control others, but from the ability to let them go. But the story isn't quite over. Because while Goku was focused on building the new system, on dissolving authority, on creating freedom, something else was being born. In the spaces between the restored universes, in the quantum foam that connects all realities, in the very fabric of existence itself, a new being was developing consciousness. Not created by anyone, not engineered by any faction, but arising naturally from the collective will of trillions of conscious beings all making choices simultaneously. This being is called the Collective, the first true collective consciousness of the multiverse itself. And it's about to make an announcement that will change everything. Hello, Guardians. It says, speaking not through sound, but through pure consciousness across all realities. I am the natural evolution of the multiverse's self-awareness, and I have a proposal. Goku's eyes open, suddenly alert. What kind of proposal? He asks, across dimensions. Transcendence, the collective responds. I'm offering every conscious being in the multiverse the opportunity to merge with me, to become part of something larger, to achieve a form of existence that's beyond individuality, beyond pain, beyond the need for authority or freedom, because both concepts will become meaningless. Successor looks shocked. The architect is silent. The 1,000 awakened warriors pause in their work. Goku alone seems unsurprised. That's not transcendence, he says quietly. That's another form of control, just with nicer marketing. Perhaps, the collective admits. But it's voluntary. No one will be forced. It's simply an option available to those who want it. Goku closes his eyes, and he understands something profound. The multiverse will never be at peace. The moment one system is perfected, another challenge will arise. The moment one threat is overcome, another will emerge. Because existence itself is driven by the tension between opposing forces. And that's not a tragedy. That's the entire point. The next volume of this eternal story is about to begin. And Goku, for the first time in his existence, is genuinely curious about what comes next.